Howdy y'all, Caleb here. Today we're going to talk about the heroic traits for Seraphon. We just got 3 new ones in the Scourge of Gyran update, so let's compare those versus the 3 existing heroic traits we already have in our faction pack. Some of these are interesting, add a little bit of a wrinkle to our strategy, and might be worth taking in certain lists. So we'll dive right in. First one up is going to be Keeper of the Old Ways. This is a heroic trait that gives us a little bit of flexibility with our asterisms come the 3rd battle round. So once per turn, reaction, you declare the Further the Great Plan ability. No, further is an important word for this one. The effect is you get to pick 2 different asterism abilities instead of 1. They're both used in addition to the one you picked in the deployment phase. So if you're new to Seraphon, the way asterisms work, once you get your army deployed, you pick an asterism that is going to affect your entire army. So, for example, Quetzl the Tamer, all of the companion weapons used by friendly Seraphon units have crit 2 to hits. So let's say you pick that one because you have a lot of cavalry, and as the game progresses, you use that, you're getting more damage out of your cavalry. Once third battle round comes around, you look at the Further the Great Plan, which is here, Further the Great Plan, and you'll get to pick another asterism. So if you've completed this task, so for our example, Quetzl the Tamer, if 3 or more enemy units have been destroyed, you'll get to pick another asterism. That could be useful if you can accomplish those missions, in that you get another buff for your army come the 3rd battle round. So what this battle trait does is it allows us to pick 2 different asterisms at that time of selection. So if you've played a lot of games with Seraphon so far, you'll probably have some mixed feelings about this 3rd battle round, because a lot of these are either really easy or a skilled player is never going to let you have them. So I think depending on how you've built your army, this is going to be it's going to have varying levels of benefits. So for example, let's say you have a Slon or a Croak, and that's kind of where some of your utility and damage is kind of focused. You might take Topak the Seer, this one here. This one gives you +1 casting for all of your Seraphon units. It has a very easy side quest here for Further the Great Plan, in that as long as your Slon is alive, then and not in combat, sorry, you gotta mention that. You'll get to pick another one. So if we combo that up with the Keeper of the Old Ones, I think this is probably our easiest path to selecting new ones. So let's say you have a Croak build. You've added 1 to his casting for the first 2 turns. 3rd turn comes around, Croak is still alive. Now you can add 2 of these. You can either have your companion crit or -1 to rend in your territory, or +2 to move. So that all kind of depends on how your army is laid out, which one you might take. Some of these end up being a little bit hard to get that side quest, like Quetzl the Preserver, if you're -1 rend in your territory. In those cases, generally I'm wanting to fight in my territory, and so there's going to be enemy units there in turn 3. Or they'll just teleport something in. Quetzl the Tamer is generally a little bit easier. 3 or more units have been destroyed. If you're going up against somebody with a lot of small units, this one's very easy to get. If they have few units that are very difficult to kill, probably won't get this one. So Tech to the Deliver, generally, I'm not accomplishing this all that often. This one requires the enemy general to be in combat or has been destroyed. So it kind of depends on their general. If their general is something like Krondus or Karazai, they're probably going to be in combat at the top of 3. This one should be easier to accomplish. If it's some little foot hero that's going to hang out in the back, probably not in combat. So mileage may vary on that one, on whether or not you can accomplish that. It's a good buff because, anything that you can do to add just general buffs to your entire army is good. So being able to add an extra one is nice. Unfortunately, I find, probably only about half the games am I accomplishing that Further the Great Plan. Maybe that's a me issue. Maybe that's a skill issue on my part. But not always at accomplishing that. But being able to select 2 extra ones is nice. I think if you're taking Croak or a Slon, this is a very good one to go into because their asterism is very easy to accomplish by turn 3. If you've lost Croak by the top of turn 3, you're probably losing anyway, and it won't matter. All right, let's look at the next one. Child of the Stars. This is a passive, and the effect is if this unit would be destroyed before removing it from play, roll a dice. On a 3-up, this unit is not destroyed, and any remaining damage points inflicted on it have no effect. Then heal D3 this unit. This unit cannot use this ability again for the rest of the battle. This is essentially Incandescent Rectresses from our old book. It's been renamed here to Child of the Stars. So this is it's a decent ability here. It is a passive. Unfortunately, it does require a 3-up roll, which means you're only going to get it, 2/3 of the time. Or in my case, you're going to fail it the one time you need it. This one would probably be good placed on something that probably isn't going to take a lot of damage. Is probably going to be a little bit more difficult to kill. May not be just like shoved into melee. Like on a Carnosaur, this probably isn't that big of a deal because they're only coming back with D3. They're going to be in melee. They'll probably just get killed by something else if they still have something else to attack, or definitely on the next turn. I think where this might be a good pick is on a Slon. If you have a Slon in your list and you're not too worried about Keeper of the Old Ways, Child of the Stars might be a go-to, in that it'll keep them alive potentially if they get sniped, if somehow they get some lucky shots off and get past your guard and kill the Slon. Maybe this will help keep them alive. Probably not the best option, but if you're having trouble with that hero getting killed early on, maybe this will help keep them alive. Might also go in like a Starseer, low wound count model that might take some shooting and could resist that kill shot with this ability. Not my favorite. I generally don't like anything that's like once per game and it's on a dice roll. So, all right. Next one is Chosen of Quetzl. This is any combat phase, so that's gonna be mine or your opponent's. So both of your combat phases, this can be used. Pick a visible, friendly, non-monster skink unit that's in combat and wholly within 12 of this unit to be the target. Roll a dice. On a 3-up, the target can move up to 8 inches. It can move through the combat ranges of enemy units, but cannot end that move in combat. This one is very interesting. I think there's a lot of play here with Chosen of Quetzl, where you can move things out of combat that are either you're trying not to get hit, or you want to get some extra movement, essentially. I think you'll see this one chosen a lot in Starstrike lists, where you have a lot of skink units. You have a lot of movement shenanigans. So imagine those Raptidon Chargers where they're already moving 12. Maybe you've got the Asterism for +2 to move on. Maybe you've got Run and Charge with them. Now you've got Starstrike to move an extra D6. And then here with this ability, you could roll a dice, and on a 3-up, you could move them another 8 inches. That's a lot of movement. I think where this might really work fairly well is your like Pterodon riders or Ripperodactyl riders. They're fast, they're flying, so not only can they get really far across the board, but this will actually allow them to fly over the top of an enemy and get even further past them. So it can move through combat ranges, but it can't move end in combat. So these smaller units that can fly will potentially get a lot of use out of this. This can also be used in the opponent's turn. So let's say they charge you and you want to... It's essentially a redeploy. So you're getting them back out of combat, out of the way of them. So imagine a scenario where you redeploy a unit, getting further away. Now they've charged maybe further than they wanted to, out of position a little bit. Now you use this ability and get even further away from them. Make sure that you're more than 6 inches away when you do this, because otherwise they could still pile in towards you and fight you within the 3-inch combat range. So I think there's some other tricks that you can do with this with Hunters of Huanche. Already, Hunters of Huanche will drop in, can hit the enemy with an ability that reduces their charge by 1 dice. And maybe you get a move in the shooting phase with Shadow Strike. They do make the charge somehow on that 1 dice, and now you can get out of combat with this ability. It just makes units very difficult to hit, pin down, and kill. So it makes those Hunters Wanche even more annoying than they already are. So I like Chosen of Quetzl. It's a very techy little heroic trait that I think is going to be very good for those skink, Shadow Strike type lists. So I like that one a lot. Let's compare that to some of our older heroic traits, some of the existing ones. These ones we know and love and been using for quite some time. How do these rank in relation to those newer ones? The first one is Being of the Stars. This one's a passive one. Ignore modifiers to save rolls for this unit, positive and negative. You saw this a lot going on to things like the Troglodon or maybe a Carnosaur that you wanted to go fight with. There was some downside to it in that if you're taking Being of the Stars and let's say you're rolling with Quetzl the Preserver, -1 rend, that hero is not getting benefit of that -1 to rend. And then if you're stacking, your potential of all-out defense onto that, where you could essentially get +2 to your save, you don't get any of that. With the new General's Handbook, I think all-out defense is not going to be, it's obviously not going to be as useful. All-out defense is limited to only one incoming attack. And so I think Being of the Stars kind of ticks up a little bit higher in usefulness with that change to all-out defense. We're not going to see as much save stacking in armies, and so being essentially ethereal, I think, makes it a little bit more valuable. So I do like Being of the Stars. I've used it quite a bit. On a Carnosaur, it can make the Carnosaur live longer than it probably should have, and you don't have to dedicate resources to that. For a Troglodon that's healing up all the time, Being of the Stars is a lot of fun for that one. Next one is Beastmaster. This one is probably the go-to heroic trait at the moment. Maybe we'll see that change with the new GHB and these new heroic traits that we have. So Beastmaster adds 2 inches to the move characteristics of friendly Seraphon cavalry and Seraphon monster units for the rest of the phase if they're wholly within 12 of this unit at the start of the move. This is very... anytime you can add move to a unit is very good. Movement wins games, gets you on objectives, gets you to the enemy, all that type of good stuff. And our cavalry tends to be fairly good right now. So Agrodons are, kind of our heavy hitters, and Raptidon Chargers end up being just a very good unit for what their cost is. So Beastmaster is excellent for cavalry. For monsters, that gets our Bastiladons moving quicker, our Stegodons, if you were to be taking those. I guess Stegodons move faster too. Carnosaurs are quicker. A very good heroic trait here in Beastmaster. So I don't see this one going away. I think if you're building a cavalry or monster list, this still has to be the go-to for that. It's just so good. It can also stack with our, Asterism of +2 to move. This is for all friendly Seraphon units, but that one stacks extremely well with that ability. It also stacks well with Quetzl the Tamer. So Quetzl the Tamer is a good one to add if you've got cavalry or monsters. Either one of those ends up with benefiting from the companion attacks having crits to hit. So if you're taking Beastmaster, those can benefit from that as well. All right, Beastmaster is very good. So last one is our Reptilian Cunning. This is a passive. Effect is if this unit charges turn, if a friendly unit wholly within 12 of this unit uses all-out attack command in the combat phase, no command points are spent. This one, I haven't used it all that often. Even with as often as we use all-out attack right now, and that's almost in every phase, you have to use it with Agrodons, you have to use it with Croxagore, you really want to use it with Raptidon Chargers. Like, all of our units really need all-out attack to get to a consistent amount of damage. So even with that, I don't know this is going to be used all that much in the new GHB. They have changed all-out attack to have a penalty to it. So it still gives +1 to hit, but now you're going to be -1 to save as well for the rest of that turn. So I don't know that is worth the cost at the moment unless you're going to just straight up kill something. Because if you're taking our hammers, Croxagore, Agrodons are already at a 4-up save. So if you're going to take that -1 to save, they're going to get destroyed. Raptidon Chargers, same. They're on a 5-up already. And now if you're going to use all-out attack with those guys and they're going to be at 6-up save, they're done. So it becomes a little bit more risky to use all-out attack. So I think that kind of reduces the value of Reptilian Cunning. Already it wasn't taken that often. I think it'll be taken even less now. So All right, those are our heroic traits. I think for Keeper of the Old Ones, Child of the Stars, you're probably looking at using those for your Slon builds. Keeper of the Old Ways is probably a good one for Croak builds. Chosen of Quetzl is more of your Shadow Strike heroic trait. Used if you've got units Raptidon Chargers, Pterodons, Ripperdactyls, Skinks. If you're using Skinks, I don't see anybody using Skinks right now, but that would be a good one for them too. I think Being of the Stars is useful for your monster lists. Beastmaster is your cavalry and monster heroic trait. Reptilian Cunning probably gets left off the list, I think, in most of these. So out of the 6, I think, probably 4 you're going to see used quite a bit. And I think the Child of the Stars and Reptilian Cunning is probably the ones you won't see all that often. So let me know which one is your favorite and which one you think you can get the most mileage out of. And I'll see you guys on the next one. See ya.